And that's because they couldn't bear the brand of a national short recession. They're quite happy for poor old Australians to have these 7 quarters of negative growth. They're quite happy for us to all sit in an individual or household recession. They just don't want that tag to dog them when Australians go to vote next year that Labor forced us into recession. So the politics of this is what's playing out here. But the record spending, I mean, it's just extraordinary. Almost $200 billion in the September quarter. That's not just obviously federal government spending. States are just as bad as well. The surpluses are gone. We're absolutely in deficit. Again, I don't know why they're going to be there on the 25th of March to deliver a budget that is a sea of red ink. This is why I think they're going to go early, because they cannot bear Australians to wrap their heads around this before they get into the ballot box.
Because as you and I have discussed before, this is not going to get better. This is going to get worse because the inflation is not going away. It'll eventually come down. It naturally does. But guess what? Your grocery prices are still going to be the same as they are today. Even if inflation goes to zero, the prices are still going to be the same. If energy prices stop rising, they're still what they are today. So the pressure doesn't go away. So then on the other side, the Treasurer says, on one hand, look, we've created, sort of all these above average wage rises for ordinary working people. Great news. But the fact of the matter is that that creates inflation, puts pressure on inflation.
Yep.
So, it's really a situation where the government has kind of got itself into a position where it's kind of stuck. Now, what's the answer going forward for either, say, a coalition government if it came to power, or indeed the Labor government if it's re-elected? Well, it's not easy for either, because to sit there and say, we'll have an austerity budget, we will cut the spending, we will cut this budget, it's going to be pretty tough, because politically that is never popular for any government coming to power.
It is tough.
So the reality for Australia is that this could go on for at least a decade before we see another resources boom, perhaps luckily get us out of trouble again.
We've got the last Reserve Bank meeting for the year next Tuesday. Of course, they don't have a meeting in January. They're back mid-February. I think the February and March one will be very indicative for the election. Where do you think they'll go next Tuesday?
So next Tuesday, definitely on hold, because even the money markets, after these softer than expected numbers today, brought forward the expectation of a rate cut from May next year until April next year. So that was a bit of a change in the market's attitude as to when interest rates will be cut, because the economy is so soft. But the Reserve Bank will stick right now with its expectation that really inflation is not disappearing. Underlying inflation, not headline inflation, which is artificially affected by energy rebates. But there's another issue, and that is that the Treasurer now is going to get his way to have a separate monetary policy board and to be able to make the appointments on that. Those appointees, you would hope, might actually be looking at that inflation story and not really rolling over easily with the suggestion that we just need interest rate cuts just to make things easier. Because the problem with that is it could re-stir inflation. If that happens, guess what? You might get a couple of interest rate cuts, but down the track, you either get a big economic fall or you suddenly get inflation popping up, and guess what? The next cycle of interest rate rises comes again.
My fear, Ross, is there'll be political appointments and a board that just agrees with the Treasurer, but we'll see. Thank you for your time. That's great analysis.